Hey guys, welcome back in. Settle down, settle in. It's time for another edition of the Rio Grande Valley's newest and best high school football podcast, Spiked with ADB. I'm your host. My name is Alex Stelbaria. My friends and colleagues call me ADB. And if you don't know me, I'm a podcaster, a longtime sportscaster, play-by-play guy. You might remember me as a ring announcer and live event host, backstage interviewer for WWE NXT. I'm a world traveler with the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters, where I was their announcer, visiting over 26 different countries in the 2 years I was there. But most importantly, I'm a Rio Grande Valley born and raised high school football fan, and I am excited to bring you this podcast each and every week. This podcast differs from all the other podcasts that you may hear because it's a gateway into the lives, the history, the personalities of those that stand on the sidelines here in the Rio Grande Valley. With our weekly one-on-one chats with an RGV head football coach, our Coach's Corner is what this podcast is all about. It's the heart and soul. But we give you more than just those one-on-one podcasts, which everyone has been enjoying. And we'll go ahead and tell you who this week's guest is.
My very dear, close, personal, longtime friend.
Thank you, Mean Gene Okerlund. Yes, my very dear, close, personal, longtime friend, Mike Evans. He's the head coach of the Javelinas of PSJA Southwest. He's going to be our guest this week in our Coach's Corner segment. That's going to be a little bit later on in the second half of the program. We'll also have our weekly segment with Jake Berry. This is where you get your X's and O's. This is where you get your commentary on our high school football teams here in the region. We'll break down some of the comings and goings of last week. We'll talk about the teams that are still unbeaten. We'll talk about a lot of different things in that particular segment with Jake Berry. That's our fifth quarter segment, and that's coming up in just a little bit. So before we get going and before we continue on this podcast, I want to get into a couple of things. One, we've made some changes to our show, and it's one of those things where, look, we've hit the quarter pole of the season. We're already in week 3, and we're looking forward towards who's going to make the playoffs. We're getting towards district play in some of the other districts. We're already one game into district play when it comes to District 16-5A Division 1. So with that, we make some adjustments. You know, we've seen some of the things teams are doing to us defensively, so we got to make some adjustments on offense. So here's some of the changes, and they're not very many, but I wanted to go over some of them with you. First of all, we made our segment, our fifth quarter segment with Jake, we made it a little bit longer. It was initially planned to be 5 good minutes with Jake Berry, maybe even 10 minutes, but we've decided to make it a good 20, 25-minute chunk because the Valley's just too big. And for what we like to cover and the things we like to talk about when we break down these games, we break down these matchups, it takes us a little bit longer than just your 5 or 10-minute segment. So we've expanded that a little bit and try to bullet point more of the topics, try to go over some interesting storylines we've seen in each particular week, and we'll start changing it up on how we approach. We'll bullet point some things out for you so you know what's coming up in that particular episode. The reason we did that is I tried out my 2-minute drill last week, and I felt that rather than talk about the games myself and then go in a segment with Jake, I felt it was better when we're talking about recapping the previous week to bounce the games off and bounce all the topics off of somebody else. Because I thought the conversations with Jake were entertaining and informative enough for you that those segments should really stand on their own and shouldn't be my commentary mixed with kind of a second interview. I didn't want to interview Jake. I wanted to talk with Jake. Jake is my guy. We've been around with 956 Sports for a long time, and although this isn't a 956 Sports property, he's helping me get it out to all of his viewers and listeners, and I can't thank him enough for that. So I felt it was better for us to have kind of a back and forth kind of commentary segment, very sports talk style, where we're kind of co-hosts as opposed to me kind of interviewing an expert type of thing, because we both have things to say on a particular given week. As part of that segment this particular week, we'll talk about a bunch of different topics, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. So we enter week 3. It's the second week of district play for 16-5A Division 1. As we mentioned, there's some surprise teams at the top of that district. There's some teams that we didn't expect to be even unbeaten at this particular point that are. Last week of non-district play here in week 3 for District 36A, they'll take a district-wide bye week for week 4 before they kick off district play here in the next couple of weeks. So lots to cover as we hit this quarter pole. So what's coming up in the fifth quarter segment with Jake Berry? We go over the remaining unbeatens in the Rio Grande Valley, who are the biggest surprises among those unbeaten teams, and we look at the district that's certainly dominating the rest of the valley over the first 2 weeks. Now, a lot can change between now and week 11, but it'll be interesting to see how many teams in this one district are still unbeaten after the first 2 weeks of the season. So in addition to that, we'll talk about the best winless team in the Rio Grande Valley. We'll also look ahead at the games here in week 3, the games that we're excited about, the games that we'll be covering, the games that we'll be watching closely as we hit this quarter pole of the season. That's all coming up in that 5th quarter segment with Jake Berry. Now, just a quick reminder that this is a fan and listener-supported podcast, so make sure you follow us on all of our social platforms, at Alex Sobario on Twitter and Instagram for yours truly, at the Alex Sobario on Facebook. Give us a like there. You can also follow the podcast with every episode. Plus, we started a new thing where we're putting little preview snippets of our interviews on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook, but especially on Twitter, at Spike Podcast. It's got its own Twitter handle, and that's where we'll put the episode links each and every week, so you don't want to miss an episode. So make sure you're following us there and following me, and you can contact any of those social media pages. And if you have a question that you want asked on the podcast, especially for myself and Jake for that 5th quarter segment, this is where we want that fan interactivity. Go ahead and drop us a line, especially after week 3. We love to have your input on the podcast. You can also hit us up now on email. If you want to send us an email, a question, a comment, etc., you're welcome to do that. That email address is spikedpodcast@gmail.com. That's spikedpodcast@gmail.com. Now, I want to thank you for taking this episode of the podcast in. We're already 3 weeks in, if you can believe it. And we ask that you please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Well, no matter where you get your podcast, please hit that subscribe or follow button. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Doesn't matter where you get it. Hit that subscribe or follow button. It helps us out tremendously. You would not believe. I'm also happy to say that we're now posting the podcast on YouTube. We have a separate YouTube channel for you can get those podcasts as well. Some people like to use YouTube to get their episodes of the podcast, or for any that they like to listen to. And so rather than have them end up on someone else's page, you can go on our page, just search for Spiked with ADB, and you'll be able to find the podcast on YouTube as well. Now, if you're on Apple, make sure you leave us a review. You give us 5 stars. It helps people find the show, and it really helps out our algorithm to get us more listeners, gets us more viewers. It helps us out in a tremendous amount of ways. Now, we bring these podcasts to you absolutely free each and every week. And to do that, we do need your help. You can support the podcast in a variety of different ways. You can go to our anchor.fm podcast page. That's anchor.fm/ADB podcast. That's anchor.fm/ADB podcast. And we also have a GoFundMe as well. GoFundMe.com/ADB podcast. Now, I don't want you guys to think that this is a kind of a handout type of thing. Also, what we're using the GoFundMe and the support this podcast functions for is really to kind of help improve our game. Adding additional pieces of equipment, some microphones. We want to start doing some remote broadcasts and some taking the show on the road type aspects of things, kind of expanding our platform and doing some additional shows in addition to this particular show. So if you want to contribute, you're more than welcome to. All we ask is you hit subscribe and you follow. And most importantly, tell someone about the show. If you have a friend that's a high school football fan, a fan of one of these coaches that we're interviewing, or just a fan of football, a parent of a player, etc., do me a favor. Share this podcast with one other person. If you're listening to this podcast right now, all I'm asking you to do is share this podcast with one other person. I'm not asking you to do 5. I'm not asking you to do 10. But just share it with one other person. And if you see it on social media, hit retweet. Give us a share. Don't just click on the link and listen each and every week. Send this podcast to one other person that you think would enjoy it, and that'll help us out tremendously as we continue to grow our listener base. All right, so coming up next, we'll have our interview segment with Jake Berry. That's coming your way as we'll get our 5th quarter underway next. This is Spiked. Hey guys, are you looking for something fun, different, and even challenging to do this weekend with your friends, your family, and even your coworkers? Well, I think I've got the place for you. It's called Trapped RGV Escape Rooms. Now, you may have never have heard of the escape room, but it's one of the fastest growing amusement activities in the entire world. Let me tell you about Trapped RGV. Your team is going to work together. You can have between 4 and 8 people. They've got to work together. You're locked in a room and you have 60 minutes to escape, but you got to use clues, solve those clues, crack codes, look for hidden items and keys, all in order to escape the room that you only have 60 thrilling minutes to escape. They've got 4 different scenarios available at Trapped RGV, but my favorite is called Taken. You begin the room handcuffed and blindfolded. You're in the clutches of a serial kidnapper, and you've got to use the clues left behind from the previous victims to try to find the key to get you out of the room. It's so thrilling, and you'll use every single minute just to try to escape. And if that doesn't sound like the room for you, they've got 3 different scenarios like Mission Moscow, Outbreak, or Cell Block X. So if you haven't had the opportunity to try one of these escape rooms, well, after you hear the next little bit of information, you won't want to miss out. So my friends over at Trapped RGV are giving all Spike listeners an opportunity to try any of their rooms with $5 off. All you got to do is use my promo code at checkout, ADB. So here's what you do. You go to trappedrgv.com, look at the calendar, book your experience, and save $5 per person on any regularly priced game just by using the promo code ADB at checkout. That's ADB by visiting trappedrgv.com and using my promo code ADB at checkout. Trapped RGV Escape Rooms, the Valley's ultimate escape game. Can you escape? Back here on the 5th quarter here on the Spike Podcast, Alex Sabario once again joined by Jake Berry of 956 Preps and, of course, by the McAllen Independent School District. And Jake, we're already through week 2. We've already got some district games under our belt, some surprise teams that are still kind of unbeaten. We've got a list of unbeatens that includes some familiar teams and some not so familiar teams. There's probably some of those undefeated teams that are still kind of like, well, we still don't know about them. And we'll get into who's still unbeaten after 2 weeks of play. But just overall thoughts on week 2 of Valley High School football.
I think I've been impressed. Look, I'll just start with it just to make everybody happy. I don't want to get in trouble at work. But I am impressed that McAllen ISD has actually 3 teams that are 2-0. Last year, it wasn't the case. All of them had lost early. I'm actually surprised that Vela, having close games this year, they seem human. For the first time in a long time, it looks like people, well, I don't want to say people, but teams have a good chance against them.
Yeah.
Especially with Brownsville Hannah putting up quite a show. It'll be telling this week because they play Memorial.
Yeah, I think for Edinburg Vela, the fact to see that there's vulnerability, it's not necessarily going to tell us that they're not going to go unbeaten again. But it is telling that there are teams that will now go up to that game with a little bit extra confidence, knowing that they're a little bit more vulnerable in the regular season. Now, some of that could be, Coach Campbell trying to figure some things out, especially offensively. But they still got a big offensive line. They've still got a great pass rush. They got an up-and-coming quarterback after, a solid season last year. So, they still have all the pieces. Let's talk about some of these unbeatens here, and I'll give you the list. This is who's unbeaten after 2 weeks. We'll start with the 6As. I mentioned teams that are surprising. You can pick it out, but this is who's unbeaten, and look at how many are from District 36A. La Jolla, McAllen, Memorial, Mission High, Rowe, PSJA North, Edinburg Vela, and Harlingen. Those are the 6As that are still unbeaten after 2 weeks. That is most of the district in District 36A. Now, granted, La Jolla's the ones that's the one I think I would say I'm a wait and see with the Coyotes. It's nice to see them at 2-0 because that's a kind of a flagship program of the 90s that did a lot of good things. But their wins after the first 2 weeks. La Jolla beat Roma 30-6. I mean, that's going and picking on a team that's in a much smaller classification than they are, and a win over Juarez Lincoln. So not a lot. Actually, a win over Palmview. My bad. But McAllen Memorial, McAllen, has a win. They're probably still trying to figure out, maybe how good they are still after 2 weeks. I know that's something that you wanted to talk about or think about after 2 weeks of play. But McAllen Memorial, Mission is 2-0. Granted, that's against Donna North. So there are some question marks here. But of those unbeatens, any that surprise you? I'm sure La Jolla does, but any that surprise you at 2-0?
Well, I think, you look at La Jolla's schedule. They probably should be 2-0.
Yeah.
Mission. What they did in the first week kind of was very telling about how good this team can be. I'm McAllen. They played two teams I believe are 0-2.
Yeah.
And so, they haven't played the toughest schedule. Their meat of their schedule is coming up. They're going to play Harlingen South this week, so that'll be telling. Rowe.
Win over Wesco on the road.
And that was impressive because, but when you look at Wesco struggled against Edgecow Chelsea. They couldn't close that off.
But then Rowe takes on Mercedes, and that's just a 3-point game. Now, that's a game that was in McAllen. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of us thought, well, that's an opportunity to, again, showcase. But, again, another close game for Rowe. Now, winning close games, that's impressive, but also kind of letting teams hang around is also interesting. But maybe that's telling us a lot about Mercedes, especially after a couple of weeks.
The one program I will say that I'm surprised about is Southwest.
Yeah.
David
was going to get to the sub 6As.
But I'm sorry. I know I jumped ahead. But
ruined the format, Jake.
Sorry. But I'll go back to the 6A, but I can't wait to talk about Southwest. I think I like where everybody's at. I'm actually surprised that if we looked at this really, San Benito and Los Fresnos, due to their schedule, they could have played cupcakes and had a 2-0 schedule.
Sometimes you schedule because you need the confidence, and sometimes you schedule because you want to challenge your team because your team's supposed to compete come playoff time.
Yeah.
And you can tell which teams like Mac. Now, granted, this is the second year of the realignment, so the second year of the schedule. So these schedules were done 2 years ago. And so it's not like you can just we're not going to do that game after all. These games are kind of like locked in from what last year in the home at home and the non-district schedule. PSJ North, again, continues to impress. Vela, I know that you wanted to talk about this a little bit, about the kind of the vulnerability of Vela, as we're getting some rumblings behind us as we record this on a Sunday night during Sunday Night Football. But Vela, they get a tight one. Now they win another tight one in Brownsville-Hannah. Brownsville-Hannah 0-2, but a really impressive 0-2.
And especially because McAllen Memorial put it on Sherryland.
Yeah.
And, Sherryland usually plays Memorial tough. So that tells you how good Memorial was when Hannah played them, because they were, it was one controversial play from being tied up.
Right.
And so I'm surprised. Hannah is an 0-2 that could be 2-0.
Right.
And, but it does say a lot about, like, Memorial. Mm-hmm. Memorial, usually, you're looking at a loss early in the season because Bill Littleton's trying to fine-tune his team. For him to be 2-0 says a lot about where McAllen Memorial is. And an impressive 2-0 last week, what they did against Sherryland, who usually Sherryland, no matter what kind of skill set they have, they play Memorial tough.
All I got to say is, what does it tell you about District 36A right now? It's virtually the entire district with the exception of PSJA High School. And who am I missing? I guess, was it Juarez Lincoln in terms of being 0-2? Yeah, Juarez Lincoln and PSJA are both at 1-1. The rest of the district at 2-0, and two of those teams in Mission and McAllen Memorial are already in the 90s in terms of points scored after 2 games. That's impressive. La Jolla, only 18 points allowed after 2 games. Mission, only 8 points allowed after two games. Now, a shutout win over Mission Veterans will do that to you, but that all in all is impressive over what the Mission Eagles have done. So there's some really good teams in this district, and when I say that, that means 6 teams are 2-0. Remember, only 4 teams make the playoffs. 2 of these teams that are pretty good aren't going to make it.
Yeah, and I look at it right now. If I was penciling in people, Mission and McAllen Memorial, I would pencil in at the top, but PSJ North.
Yeah.
And then everybody kind of fills in. I think what you're going to see is there's going to be a fight for 4, possibly 3 and 4, but I'm really thinking 4. And there are going to be good teams that are knocked out on this one. But then you look at other districts like 31 6A. They've got a bunch of 1-1s.
Yeah.
One 2-0 in Vela, but the rest of them are 1-1. So you really can't. I don't know if you can paint a picture, because I remember Economides used to, and no offense to Economides when I say this, but they used to schedule some really cupcake games.
Yeah, they used to schedule the 4As and things like that. When a lot of times it was because that was all that was available to them. But I agree with you.
And now those schools have come back and they've knocked on Economy's door, and they're 0-2 now.
Yeah.
So you can't always schedule those cupcakes, because the cupcakes sometimes start to.
Yeah.
They'll upset your stomach.
Sometimes those cupcakes are teams like that
Rio
you think
Hondo.
are Rio Hondo and
Yeah.
La Feria, and they've got some hosses. I want to go into the sub 6A. I know how excited you are about this. Now, our guest this week on the podcast is none other than Mike Evans, the head coach at PSJA Southwest. A remarkable start for the Javelinas, kind of a historic start for them. They are 2-0 on the season. PSJA Southwest this past week with a 28-14 victory over Donna. That was an interesting storyline game. If you know Mike Evans used to be the running back at Donna High School when his dad, Dave, was the head coach over in Donna. Legendary career when he was the head coach of the Redskins. So that should have been an emotional victory for Mike. But this turnaround of the program, which kind of started last year with the buy-in and the triple option and things of that sort, but not just the offense, but it's the defense of what PSJA Southwest has done over the course of the last 2 years. Here's what PSJA Southwest has done. They've only allowed 28 points to the 49 that they've scored. So, they're not blowing people out. They're doing enough to win games. You've got to be impressed with what Mike has done to get this team in this position.
Yeah, I look at they've got one kid, Adrian La Máquina Hernandez. He's got 3 picks already in 2 games, 1 fumble recovery. I've been able to put his stuff on my Twitter account, and he's been impressive. But you look at their defense. The secondary is really stingy.
Yeah, they are.
And so you're going to dare teams to throw on you when you can do that. You can play man coverage on the outside, and then you can pretty much go at the quarterback. And so if you got disciplined secondary, you can do a lot. And so I think what you see with Southwest right now is they're poised. I mean, they're 2-0 in district, right?
Well, 1-0 in district.
1-0 in
Yeah,
district.
because win over Donna. But that's a big win.
Yeah.
That's a team that's supposed to compete for a playoff spot that you now have a tiebreaker against.
Yeah, and so last year they missed the playoffs, and I actually talked with Coach Duty, one of their coaches.
Yeah,
and
David Duty, who's kind of runs everything behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I had a chance to talk to him or chat with him, and he was telling me about how good the secondary was. You know, and I saw one guy get trucked in one of the highlights, and I was like, wow, this team's impressive. I mean, they got running backs that like to lower their shoulder.
Yeah,
they've got a secondary that can play straight up, and
he's made that a tough program, like a program that used to be a passive program into one that's that has a chip on their shoulder.
And they've had athletes.
Yeah, they have. They certainly have.
So they're putting it together.
Yeah, and that's been interesting to see the Javelinas kind of join the rest of their PSJA brethren in terms of being competitive. Now, the other teams that are sub 6A that are 2-0, Rio Grande City, they have a victory. Brownsville Veterans, after a tough comeback victory over Rivetta last week, they had an impressive victory this past week. And then you add La Feria to the mix as well. We'll start with the two from the 5A ranks. We'll start with Brownsville Veterans Memorial. They picked up the victory over Lopez. That's to be expected. It was a going away victory, 49-6. I know David Cantu says, we got to stop the run better because Lopez was running up on us, is what he told RGV Sports. But they're impressive in the second win of their campaign. And in Rio Grande City, a team that thought we was going to get back to it last year, would compete for an opportunity. They sort of did early, and then they kind of fluttered. They changed coaches. Leo Mireles now there. They've scored 88 points in 2 games. Rio Grande City with a win over Palmview. That was a shootout, and Palmview's good every year. What are your thoughts on those 2 teams of the 5As that are also 2-0?
Well, I think Brownsville Vets is going to be your standard bearer there, because they're the crop of kids that they've got and the coaching staff. I mean, they've got a really good thing going there. I like what they've got. And then which one's the other one? Rio,
yeah.
I don't know, because honestly, the first game,
it's always a mystery.
They're playing Roma, and so you just can't. Right now, Roma is one of those games where, yes, it's an emotional game, but I don't know if it's a competitive game at this point.
Right.
How competitive it is. I'm not nothing against Roma, Got friends over there on that staff, but I don't know if they have the talent that they once had.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Now, you add La Feria into the mix in terms of teams that are unbeaten after 2 weeks. That's kind of to be expected as of now from La Feria, just because what we expect from that program. This last one, a 63-0 victory over Santa Rosa as they sort of reopened Lions Stadium with that new field turf, and they were run all over the place on that new field turf.
Yeah, I mean, you got a set quarterback that can throw dimes. I think you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Especially with he's got size. It's not like he's a tiny guy. But you got to like what they have because they've got a nice offense and a well put together defense, so they'll be just fine.
St. Joseph Academy also 2-0.
Yeah,
and both against 4A teams, and I think both of the programs that St. Joseph has beaten are teams that usually out. What's the number? There's more kids on the field than that of St. Joe, just because of the private school versus public school thing. They're smaller schools, yes, they're 4A programs, kids that go both ways. But in terms of picking of the, crop, St. Joe's has what it has from year in and year out. So Tino's done a nice job after what was a rough season last year.
Yeah, and people look at it and they're like, oh, St. Joe's, the Catholic school down here, that they usually load up. But this year, he doesn't have a money, at quarterback. He's doing it with new players, new coach, not new coaches, but they're having to change up the offense a little bit to suit the team.
Yeah, and so far, I mean, it's working. They're 2-0,
and they're putting up points, 74.
So far, 74 after 2 weeks, and win over Progresso, which is probably a game they should win.
But Gruya was a tough one.
Gruya certainly a game that should have been a little bit more competitive, and it was. It went into overtime, but they came out on top. Maybe another test for Brownsville St. Joe, another home game for them as they take on Rio Hondo this week. So Rio Hondo, they look to be a rebuilding team this year. We'll have to wait and see until they get to district play. Now, granted, every team in that district makes the playoffs, so that Rocky's trying to figure some things out here in these non-district games, knowing he's got a playoff game coming up. They want to win a district title, and it looks as competitive as ever with Raymondville, PI, and Rio Hondo, all kind of in the same boat as teams that are good, but they're not great like they've been in the past.
Yeah, and it happens with those kind of programs. You're not going to have a talent pool that you always have. You're more likely going to have at the bigger programs.
Yeah. Any games this past week that surprised you? Any games that you kind of were like, man, that team's going to be pretty interesting, kind of moving forward?
Well, I'm actually surprised the Edinburg and Rivetta score that Edinburg had to come back to win that game.
Rivetta had the competitive game against Brownsville veterans, and now this week against Edinburg High School.
I didn't realize they had an exodus of Lopez coaches that went to Rivetta, so that surprised me. But for Edinburg to have to score in the last couple of minutes against Rivetta, it's telling about the Edinburg program, but more for Rivetta, because Rivetta played tough against Brownsville vets. So I know it's a 6A program, but they don't get the numbers that some of the other schools do. I'm actually Mercedes.
Okay.
Mercedes was one fumble away from taking the lead late in that game, which would have made that game a lot different. They fumbled on about the 1 yard line, and it went to the end zone, and Rowe recovered after a safety.
Rowe was in control of that game for a good chunk of the first half, and then that second half, Mercedes kind of made some really good adjustments.
14 points in the third.
Yeah.
So that and with the chance to score, to really put themselves in the lead, and then Rowe was going to have to actually put some offense together to score. Luckily for that fumble, so Mercedes could be 2-0, and Rowe could have been 1-1.
Yeah. So I'll give you some other ones here. Let's stick with that 16-5A Division II. Pioneer looks as dominant as we expected to be. They're already at 98 points scored this season. They had that really impressive showing against Warriors Lincoln. I believe it was 57-7 at one point before Warriors Lincoln scored a couple of more touchdowns along the way. 57-21 their win over Warriors Lincoln, so they look to be just fine. I'm curious your thoughts on the Weslaco Ed Couch Elsa game. 45-35, Weslaco gets the win, so Roy Stroman gets his first win as head coach of the Panthers, but Ed Couch also putting up a fight falls by only 10 points in the black hole. Your overall thoughts on that game, all things considered? Ed Chelsea 0-2, but could they be inching their way back?
I think they could, but I also see a Westlake team that probably, which is surprising because a lot of the kids are back from last year. They didn't know how to close that game.
Yeah,
and so that kind of leads me to wonder, is it just new coach jitters? As far as play calling at the end of the game. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the film on that game, but from all intents and purposes, Westlake should be able to close those games off a little bit better, especially with the veteran leadership they have on that team. So I think it's more of Westlake not closing the game off more than it is Ed Chelsea getting some. I saw there was one where there's a field goal that got blocked, turned into 6. So
they're fighting. This Ed Couch
Yeah.
team is fighting their way back to respectability. And remember, this is a team that got shut out 4 times last year in Ed Couch Chelsea. So this thing and put points up on the board, I'm sure, is a welcome over in the Delta area. Now, this is the game that I want to talk about for 2 reasons. Port Isabel 37-16 over Far Valley View. Now, Valley View is supposed to have, as always, one of the top defenses in the Valley. This is a 5A Division II team losing in kind of runaway fashion by a team, lesser of a classification, Port Isabel. So Coach Strunk had his team ready to play for this game and ready to score some points.
Yeah, I was surprised by the score. That PI took it to him.
Yeah,
but like a lot of programs, Valley View, it's cyclical. They're going to have a good team maybe 2 years in a row, and then the third year. But at the same time, I don't know who they.
They have a lot of guys. They have a lot of guys back this year, and the quarterback that was in Mission last year. Obviously he came over, him and his brother. So they were supposed to be all set with a veteran quarterback, and only 16 points scored in that game. Now, granted, PI with the offense that Coach Strunk is running, is a lot of ball control and taking care of the ball and running the clock, but I'm a little surprised defensively that they gave up 37 points.
Now, the surprising thing is, what does that say about Porter?
Right.
Where's Porter going to be? If they're able to beat PI week 1, what does that say? What does it say for the rest of the district? Because it might be helter-skelter all year. You might have teams that play good one week and tank the next week.
Hey, you know what? You're exactly right. I didn't think about it from that side of things. Well, now Porter, they fell to Pace 17-14, and they had control of that game for a while on Saturday. So maybe you're right. Porter may be a team that we need to be watching out for. Granted, unfortunately for them, they're in that 10-team district with Brownsville Vets. But I think there's some opportunity there for a team like Porter to sneak in because PSJA Southwest has that win over Donna now, Rio Grande City. They're kind of a mystery team. Could they be the one that gets in? Pace, they've given up more points than they've scored. Mission Veterans, by the way, I forgot to mention this. They're back. Yeah. There was absolutely nothing wrong with Mission Veterans. I think Coach Gilpin tweeted out, reports of our demise have been greatly exaggerated, and they come back with a 48-14 domination over PSJA Memorial. You might want to tell Tony Farina to quit picking against the Mission Patriots. As we move ahead here, Jake, let's look ahead towards this coming week. A lot of interesting games on the schedule. Let's start in the 6A classification. We'll go with the Thursday night game. San Benito PSJA High. That was a fun game last year. I believe San Benito came up on the winning end against the Bears, whereas Lincoln takes on Edinburg High. That's a game that I think the Bobcats really need to win to build some confidence. And then Harlingen South taking on Mac High in McAllen. Your thoughts on some of those games?
Well, I just wonder right now, is PSJA going to be as explosive as they were last year? I know they don't have the same quarterback, but the tools around them are there. So, if PSJA can be half as explosive, San Benito will have a hard time with them. I do think San Benito wins that game. Looking at the other games, Mission Vets and Brownsville Vets, that's a tough early season game for Mission Vets. They can get past Brownsville Vets, it opens up a little bit for them. The end of the season. It's a must-win game for both teams. So it'll be telling right now to see if Mission Vets is where they want to be. If last week was, their game against PSJA Memorial was just, a lesser team versus a better team, or this one, which is, I think it's a little bit more even.
Yeah.
We'll see where the cream rises.
I think that's my favorite game of the weekend is the battle of the veterans programs. That game also on a Thursday over at Sam Stadium. That's a game that I'm going to certainly want to attend. How about the McAllen game? Because we got a McAllen High team that's 2-0 going into this Thursday night game against Harlingen South. Harlingen South coming off a loss. McAllen trying to extend their record to 3-0, but this Harlingen South team should be a little bit more veteran-laden than this McAllen team, but they get them at home.
Yeah, what happened to Harlingen South last week was, that was eye-opening for them, I think, too, because for PSJA North to run right past them, and pass right over the top of them, it puts everything.
You had a lot of that film up, so you saw quite a bit of that game.
Yeah, and they beat Edinburg first week.
Yeah,
and Edinburg struggled with Vela, so you don't know I don't know where to make that game, and then losing to PSJA North. Now McAllen 2-0 against two teams that probably in the past they probably should beat because of the talent level, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, trying to be diplomatic.
Of course you are.
But McAllen, I think they saw some things last week. I don't know if they figured out who their quarterback is going to be, but this Curl kid was pretty good to close that game off. And they got talented players at skill positions, so it's going to be a really tough game. I don't know what to expect. I'm going to be doing that game, so it's Harlingen South and McAllen. I get to see Harlingen South for the first time in a few years, so. We'll see how Coach Ritchie's team does.
So let's take a look at some of the Friday games. PSJA North and Weslaco. That's a big game for a lot of reasons. Mostly because Weslaco, I think they're still trying to prove to people that they are still the Weslaco from last year. PSJA North is just like, man, you keep peeking against us, we got to beat you, and we got to beat you going away. So they're playing with a chip on their shoulder every week until Coach Kaufman doesn't coach there anymore. Mission against Pioneer. This is going to be fun. This is Mission High taking on Sharyland Pioneer. Now Pioneer plays like a 6A in terms of their offense. They got some size. They've got some size like a 6A. Mission doesn't have quite the size, but they have the ball controllability size in their running back attack. They've got the sophomore quarterback. That, to me, is perhaps the showcase game of the weekend, even though it's a 6A versus a 5A. And a 5A Division II, that's a 5A Division II that really is a 5A Division I program in terms of numbers coming out for football, etc. And that's going to be, to me, that's as much of a test for Mission as it is for Tom Lee's Diamondbacks.
I think it's almost, I don't want to say it's a contrast in offensive philosophies, but Mission is going to go to the huddle, come back out, and they're going to run their pro set.
Yeah.
Whereas Pioneer is what you see in college right now. The spread, very fast to the line. Look at the coaches. Let's make the play. Let's go. And I think what you're going to see is Pioneer is going to test the legs of Mission, and we'll see where Mission is as far as their stamina. But I think if they don't score at a higher rate, this is Mission's game, and we'll find out how good Pioneer's defense is. They gave up a lot of points to Harlingen. They played Juarez Lincoln, who they aren't they don't have the most depth. So this Mission team will be their first test. That how do I want to say it? Defensively, they're pretty good. So they got a lot of points off of Harlingen. We'll see if they can do that against Mission.
Yeah. The other game that I think everyone is going to be excited about the result from, it's going to be a game in Edinburg. McAllen Memorial taking on Edinburg Vela. McAllen Memorial and Vela both impressive after two games. It's a battle of unbeaten, so one of these teams will not be unbeaten any longer. Is this the game where Edinburg Vela's long regular season winning streak comes to an end?
I think if this is probably the best chance, and I think it might be their best chance because once they enter district, I think they walk through it minus maybe a couple games. That
You're right. I think so too. I think there are some competitive teams in that district, but Vela's is certainly the class.
Yeah, and sometimes you want that loss before you go into district because for both teams because it tells you that you're deficient in some area. But I will say this: I think Memorial will chew up clock like nobody's business, and they have a lot of road games this year, but they're going to chew up as much clock as possible. Now, Vela last year was able to capitalize on a lot of long plays against McAllen Memorial. It'll be different, I think, this year because Campbell Space can do the same thing for Memorial. But I think Bill Littleton would love to chew up as much clock as possible and limit Vela's chances at getting the ball back.
Also on Friday, a game featuring a non-Valley opponent. This game going on at Rutledge Stadium. Harlingen going on to take on Converse Judson. Now Harlingen also at 2-0. Team that scored 78 points, but they've given up quite a few points as well, 69 so far on the season. Just your thoughts on Harlingen. It's a game I kind of expect them to lose, but a game that they'll get a lot out of.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is one of those games where, and Coach Gomez was one of the first guys to go up and play like Abilene Christian or Abilene. Was it Abilene Christian?
I believe so.
I can't
Not Abilene
that
Christian.
game.
That's a college.
Yeah,
yeah.
Abilene, something. Up in San Antonio, he's not afraid to go play those games, much like the other, like Los Fresno, San Benito. I like this game for them. I don't know if they'll win this game, but I think that in the long run, it gets them ready for the playoffs.
Game on Saturday that is a game that was actually washed out last year. If you remember the big storm that came in, Weslaco East and Brownsville Hanna. Brownsville Hanna, of course,
lost Alexander.
0-2 on the season. Weslaco East, they're a team that you kind of were expecting to maybe take it to Laredo Alexander after their first week, but Laredo Alexander kind of showing that they're just as good as they have been over the last 3 to 5 seasons. So this is kind of a test game for Brownsville Hanna to kind of say, okay, our season can go one of two ways at this particular point. Are we going to keep losing close games, or are we going to win one of these? This game is in Brownsville on Saturday.
And I really think this is a tough game for Weslaco East, just for one fact only. Unlike McAllen Memorial, unlike Vela, who can score fast, this for Weslaco East, they're going to chew clock. This is the one team that does chew clock. 3 yards and a cloud of dust. I mean, if they can take it long, they're going to take it long. It'll be telling for Hanna to see if they can weather that. I mean, all that contact, because this is a team that likes to fight their game. Like their game is in the trenches, and they don't pass a lot. I think Bill Littleton and Coach Burgett are pretty much the standard bearers on just like run as much as you can and throw it whenever you need to. But I like it. I like this game for the sheer fact you're going to find out what kind of magic Victor Campos has when he has the ball. But the question will be, how many times will he have the ball?
I'm curious how Coach Guess is going to approach this game offensively. And I'm fixing to interview him for the podcast here tomorrow as we record this on a Sunday. And I won't ask him this on the podcast because that's not the purpose, but I'll ask him on the side, how he looks to approach this game, because Hanna can really be versatile in the way they approach a game offensively, because they're a team that can spread it out, but when they've had running backs, they can chew some clock as well. Are they going to try to make this a 17-14 type of game, or are they going to try to kind of throw it over the top? And does Weslaco East have the secondary to match up against the receivers and with Victor Campos? And will Victor Campos be looking to kind of take it on his own a little bit more because of his athleticism to try to make something happen on his own?
Well, I think what you've seen, Coach Guzman, their DC, has seen is probably he's seen him play against a running team and against a passing team, and he's got to see 2 games on him. He's going to have them scouted pretty well, and I think this is one of those things where we'll find out how much magic he has, because Victor Campos does not leave the pocket, so you're going to have to find him in the backfield. You're going to actually have to get him, and you're going to have to bring him down. And we'll see if Weslaco East can put something together that can actually attack him. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to bring a linebacker or safety every time, but I can imagine something like that.
So as we finish up the fifth quarter here with Jake Berry, time to get to some questions. Our good buddy Matt Stepp, who's going to be here for week 3, here in the Rio Grande Valley covering.
Has he picked a game?
Yeah, he has some games out. I'm not really sure where he's going to be. I believe he's going to be in Lyford for one of the games. I'm not really sure where he's going to be at on Friday, but we'll tweet out that info if you guys want to get Matt Stepp's autograph and buy him some tacos or something. But he said, guys, interested in y'all's thoughts on Vela. They are winning, but not near as dominant. Is this because of United and Hannah, or is Vela a more flawed team? We got into that a little bit already, but just your immediate reaction to that question.
I think the word flawed is, I don't want to say harsh, but I think that there might be some parity right now as far as their talent. Their talent may not be as deep as it has been in the past, and you gotta have some skill players that are like that they've had before, and they've had some talented skill players. So right now, they might be deficient there. But I don't think they're flawed. I just think that there's more parity this year.
I also think, as much as we've praised Vela for so many years, and rightfully so, I do think that they've had a lot of close calls in the early rounds of the playoffs. This is a team in Vela that probably should have lost to Hannah 2 years ago in the first round of the playoffs. Not last year, but the year prior. Yeah. It was a miracle field goal that kind of put them on top that Hannah certainly remembered. There are things about Vela this year that it seems like they're trying to figure out about where they are offensively. But now look, let's put things into perspective here with Edinburg Vela. They've scored 79 points. It's defensively where I think the vulnerabilities are showing. They've allowed 73 points. This last week against Brownsville Hannah was 28-27. The game the previous week certainly was interesting with United. Now, United has been good the last couple of years. That's a team that beat Mission in the postseason last year and went another round deep in the postseason. So I don't know. I want to say Edinburg Vela they like to also play a lot of players in the non-district, so that they have their team once they get to 31.
And make parents happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're right.
We'll just say that I had to do that when I coached basketball. Yeah,
Yeah, because you need them on board come week 6 or week 7.
Yeah. But having said that, I think Vela is just as talented as they have been, but I think that there's probably more parity across the district, across the valley. Hannah alone, though, the one thing I was telling about Hannah is that they only have 4 returning starters, and they played that well against them. And if it wasn't for, I think it was a fumble recovery for a touchdown for Vela, that's a tied ball game.
Yeah. Another question, Frank from Far wants to know about PSJA Southwest, who we talked about a little bit a while ago. How good can this Southwest team be? Is this the year they finally make the playoffs?
Southwest has who this week? I think I looked at the schedule. They have who do they have this week? They have. I looked at it. They have PSJA Memorial.
Yeah,
that team's 3-0 this week. I'm going to call it right now, but yeah, they should be 3-0 after this week, and 2-0 in district. I think that this team makes the playoffs this year, just from what I've seen. And yes, it's too early to tell, but I'm going to call it out. I think they make the playoffs.
And remember last year, PSJA Southwest went into Brownsville and beat Brownsville Veterans Memorial, a team that was the number 2 team in the district last year. So if that's a possibility with last year's team that didn't have as many offensive weapons, that could be certainly an interesting game. I do think it's still Mission Veterans District to lose, but you're right. But here, for PSJA Southwest to make the playoffs, they need to continue doing what they're doing, control games, and they'll need to win the games against the Porters and the Lopez's and the Palmviews, and this game this week against PSJA Memorial, so they can weather the Brownsville veterans and the Mission veterans. And if they're in that position, then they're in prime striking for winning or for making the postseason over at Southwest. Any final thoughts as we go into week 3, Jake?
No, I think it's going to be a very competitive week. You look at the schedule across the board. Next week, 36A is off.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a lot of teams. I think they're going to try some gimmicks.
Yeah.
They've got a week. They've got a week to try this out before the actual season matters. Like at least in the 6A's. So I think you're going to see some razzle-dazzle in some games.
Yeah.
So I would like to see, Memorial versus Vela become one of those epic games so I could, watch it and look at all the tape.
Yeah, I'm actually just really excited that we're already in week 2 of District 16 5A Division 1. I think teams are starting to kind of establish themselves a little bit, and I wanted to pull up that schedule of games one more time so we can chat about it real quick, because you've got the Mission Veterans Brownsville Veterans game on a Thursday, certainly the showcase game, and that's really, I don't want to say it's for the district title, but it's a game that matters more than any other on the schedule for the district title, because those are the two teams that you would expect to be there at the end of the season. Palmview and Porter, Southwest against Memorial. That's also a game that matters because of the Tri-City Championship, so to speak. Brownsville Lopez and Rio Grande City. You would expect Rio Grande City to move to 3-0 at that particular point, and 2-0 in district play. And then Pace and Donna, that's a game that'll matter
down the stretch
because that's a tiebreaker game. And if you go talk to Coach Leal over in Donna, he's like, we haven't won enough of those tiebreaker games where at the end of the season, even though we have the amount of wins we should have, it's the who we lost to that certainly matters on getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, and look, you fold a game to somebody that you should beat, and that's one thing. But if you could steal a game from somebody, it's going to help you along the way. I mean, we're all about positioning here,
right?
And everything starts, especially in those districts, early.
Yeah, and Pace versus Donna, especially with Pace being a 1-1 and Donna being 1-1, whoever takes that game, giving themselves an upper hand for that 4th spot, it's going to go a long way, kind of moving forward. Jake Berry, you want to plug anything, Jake?
Joining us on Wednesday when we go live. From UFC Gym in McAllen. We'll do something for Area 956, their Facebook page, or you can join us on 30 minutes later at 7:30. So it's 7 and 7:30 on 956 Sports Facebook page, and that's a quick one. Those are just picks.
Yeah, it's you and Tony Farina
Yes.
there picking the games. Are you kind of keeping track of Tony's record here? Because
You know what? I don't think
fair.
we're keeping record until district.
Okay.
So
well, we're in district.
We're in district. I know it's true. We probably should. We probably should have done it this week. But I'll have to look at it and see where we went.
Let's try to get Tony to quit picking against Mission Veterans Memorial. That does not sit well with Coach Gilpin there.
I can imagine.
So at 956 Jake on Twitter, at 956 Sports on Facebook as well, and of course, make sure you're catching the live streams for McAllen ISD, those games as well.
And if you haven't seen our production on Thursday, you have to see it now. The one thing I will say is this: we're not able to keep the games up because the coaches have to come to an agreement where they want the games off until later on in the season, so that people don't scout them that much. Although other places are putting their games up, and that befuddles me.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen one of the games at McAllen ISD, you gotta watch it. It's like watching Sunday Night Football. Speaking of that, the Pats are up 27-3.
As we're recording
crazy.
this, it's okay.
You have to check these games out. They're great, and the production value is tremendous.
Yeah, and so I share them on my page so that at the Alex Obario, so that every single Thursday when the game is up, we share it so you guys can check it out live. My thanks to Jake Berry, and this has been the 5th quarter. Coming up next, we still have our chat with Mike Evans, where we talk about living in a coaching family, coaching against his dad last season, and what he thinks about the new era of Star Wars. Now, all of that's coming your way next. This is Spiked. And we're back here on Spiked here with Alex Delbario this week. Pleased to be joined by my good friend, a guy that I've known a very, very long time. And he's the head football coach at PSJA Southwest of the Javelinas. And his name is Mike Evans. Mike, thanks for taking the time of being here with me. Like I said, you and I go back quite a long ways. Just before we get started, do you want to tell folks how long we've actually known each other? Because I think you're one of the few coaches here in the Valley that I get to cover that I could say, yeah, I've ridden the buses with that guy. I've coached debate with this guy. It's kind of a strange situation to talk about.
Well, it's over 20 years for sure. What is it, 1998?
1998.
Yeah, that's been over 20 years. I mean, the great debate, Sherman, Texas, man. First time we ever met each other and got into. After that, we started coaching debate, got to know each other real well.
I think it's funny that everyone has all these different backgrounds that kind of go into their coaching or that make them who they are. I think forgive me for saying this, but because of your Star Wars fandom and my Star Wars fandom, we're probably two of the nerdiest sports guys in the Valley right.
Definitely. I'm probably the nerdiest head coach in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm proud of it, though. I don't take any offense to it.
But I think that makes your personality what it is. And I think even talking to some of your players when we did football previews, I think they appreciate your personality, that you're different. Do you try to be different in terms of how you coach?
Somebody always gave me the advice that kids will see straight through you if you're fake.
Yeah.
So I know who I am and the way I am, and I'm just that person, and I just coach like that.
So what do you? I guess if you had to, describe your coaching style or kind of the way you are as a coach, how would you describe it?
I'm definitely a player's coach, but I'm a classic love and discipline guy. I have a lot of fun with the kids, and we play around and we enjoy ourselves. But at the end of the day, if I've got to enact some discipline or be strict or raise my voice to get focused, I'm quite well at doing that. So it allows me to have fun with them because they have the respect that if I need to get something done, I'm going to get it done.
Do you think that the discipline or the being able to, come down when the situation calls for it, but do it sparingly because you are a love guy and a respect guy, that it has more impact, because you're not doing it every time like some coaches or like the old days of coaching that you pick and choose when and you do it when it really warrants it?
Absolutely. I think most of the time, you always keep an intensity there, but I've always approached it like I'm a teacher. I'm teaching you the game of football, and I'm going to be very clear and defined about what we're doing. And when you're not doing something that I expect you to do, I'll let you know. And usually it's just very calmly and just let you know and redirect you. And when the situation calls for a little more emotion, well, of course, that's as a good coach, you got to learn how to mess with the emotional appeal of your team, and that's when that calls for that.
I want to talk about your team and your coaching style, especially over the last few years. I want to do that kind of near the tail end, but I want to talk about where you come from, and you come from a coaching family. For those, I think most people in the Valley football community knows that you're Dave Evans' son, and that you played for your dad when you were at Donna, and your dad certainly has had some really solid coaching stops along his career. He's over at Brownsville Veterans now. Can you tell me what it's like being a football player, coming from a coaching family, coming from a football family the way you did?
Well, it's kind of football's in our DNA and the way that I've been raised. From the time I was a little kid, where I went to Dad's games, and that just football became just part of my life. And being a player, playing for your dad, that's something different. It's special. Not everybody gets to participate like that, and I had a great time playing for my dad, and it was a unique experience with me. He was one of those. He used me as an example. He wasn't going to take it easy on me, so I got my good share of discipline from my dad there. But it got me ready for what I'm doing now, and I really enjoyed it.
Did you feel like he was harder on you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was harder on all three of us.
Yeah.
My two other brothers played for him too, and he wanted to let everybody know that my boys aren't getting any special treatment. That no one can say, oh, he's just doing that because it's his son. Our teammates would be like, hey, man, he's meaner to you than he is to us.
Yeah.
No, of course, he's going to set the tone. And, the first step of leadership is you got to set the tone, and it's with some of your best people.
Yeah, and you had a chance to play for Donna during Donna's heyday. When your dad was there, it was during a real special time for Donna. I remember, and I can't remember the year it was. It might have been you and I sophomore year, might have been our junior year, where you guys went undefeated.
That was our senior year.
It was our senior year.
Yes.
And I remember the big matchup against McAllen Row. Mac High. Okay. And it just going back and thinking about some of the great years that you guys had. What can you tell me, or can you think back about how special that time was, and for Donna, for you, your family, and all that stuff? Do you look back on it?
Oh, I do. It was a special time. I mean, Donna, I mean, the community was really rallied behind the football program. I mean, Donna's a football town still.
Yeah.
But it was at its heyday there. Pack stands, Craze fans. You know, I think that the team I played on 2000, we all love football so much. I think there's 7 or 8 coaches just that came out of that one team. That's unheard of. You know, we just really liked football a lot. I mean, there's a couple of Donna. There's a defense coordinator at Wesco East, Mike Gonzalez. One of my buddies, the head girls basketball coach in South San, Jacob Alegria. I mean, there's a few of us out there and came from that special team. But no, everybody still talks about that team because that was the last time Donna went undefeated.
And let's go back to your playing career. You played running back in a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of era of Donna football. Did you always want to play running back? Was that the position that kind of drove you when you were a kid, and then you kind of grew into that, or what when you were wanting to be a football player, was that the position that you wanted to play?
No, I was wanting to be a quarterback, but I couldn't throw. I had a terrible arm. I'd try, and I couldn't throw. I mean, I wore number 12 because Randall Cunningham was my favorite player. I wanted to be a fast scramble quarterback, and I was a short, squatty little fullback. So that's what I ended up being.
So you were a fullback, and you were. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your older brother was on the team when you were a sophomore, right? Is that correct?
My freshman year. I was on the JV. He was a varsity All Valley running back. He was pretty good. He's a lot better than I was. Yeah.
So tell me about because you and I think I've talked about it when you come from a family of players, and in my household it's my sister went to Harvard, right, and so you living up to your sister, it becomes a challenge. No matter what you do, you're thinking about it. Your parents might not be thinking about it, but you're thinking about it. Did you think about that stuff because of the success your brother had as a football player?
I did at first, and then when I started hitting my sophomore year, I wasn't a bad player, but I knew I wasn't at that level. I was going to be me, whatever I ended up being. I compared myself the whole way. I mean, you can't help but do that, but I mean, it never really bothered me. I knew I was never going to be a 2,000-yard rusher or anything like that, but it didn't stop me. I had fun, and I thought I had a good career in high school.
I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I wanted to bring this up because I think you have a interesting story from your football career in that you had a major injury in football, and it came kind of early. I believe it was your sophomore year, wasn't it?
Senior.
Oh, it was your senior year.
My senior year, the 10-0 year.
The 10-0 year. Tell me about, I guess, going through that, and is there any part of that process as a player that you take away when you have a player get injured, especially if it's a major injury? Is there anything you take away from that experience that you can, I guess, use as a teaching moment at all, or try to help kids kind of cope with the situation?
It happened once in my career. Somebody snapped their leg, kind of like I broke my leg in I can't remember, the tibia, the fibula. I broke both of them in Wesco, and it looks traumatic, but that injury is not as major as an ACL or whatever, but it is pretty traumatic when you look at it. And as far as taking away, the one person that got hurt, when I watched him, and I just told him I had the same thing, and be thankful it wasn't an ACL because it's a lot quicker recovery.
Yeah. So you go through your high school career, and you go off to college, and did you know you wanted to coach football like throughout high school? Was there ever a thought? It's like, that's what Dad does, and do I go in the family business, or do I try something else?
No, I always wanted to coach football. I knew that, and my parents, they were the ones that didn't want me to. They wanted me to do something. They wanted me to be a lawyer or something like that, financial person. So I kind of studied that in college, but it was always, in college, I was coaching, intramural teams. I was always the coach of the intramural team, and I loved it. I ate it up. I was thinking about all day, okay, what play can I come up with to win the intramural championship, which is not even a big deal. But I just knew that I had a passion for strategizing.
I think you make a lot of things a big deal. You when you have a passion for something, and this is something I don't know how many folks know about it, but I wanted to. When you have a passion for something that you're doing, you take it. You dial it to 11. You really do.
I do.
And where does that passion come from? For not just for coaching, but just for life in general.
I don't know. I whenever I get interested in something, I just get obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I want to be good at it, and I want to understand it. I want to, it's part of my personality is to understand how things work. So that gets it going. Then once I understand how things work, I'm like, okay, how can I optimize or be the most efficient with whatever it is I'm doing? And then once I figure out how to be pretty efficient, okay, what if I'm going against somebody else that's efficient? How do I think on that next level? And that's the fascinating process, and I hope that it never gets to the point where football gets boring, but there's enough great minds out there that you're always feeling that you're tested.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so much fun.
I think too, for those that don't know you, is that you try to, I don't want to say completionist. That's because that's what they say about folks that play video games. And they do it till they finish it, and they won't do anything else until they finish it. Or
I'm not like that.
But you're not. But you're not like that. You tend to be hyper focused, I guess, on things. Is there anything else in your life that you can look at and say that I was hyper focused on this particular thing, and that's not necessarily football?
I went through a lot of things. College, I was hyper focused on poker. I was playing poker.
Oh, that's right.
That was my job.
That was my
job.
Yeah.
That was my job. I was playing poker, and I think I had like 25 poker books that I learned.
Yeah.
I remember there was one time
because when we were in college, that's when
the poker boom.
That's the Chris Moneymaker poker boom.
That was the poker boom. I got all into that, and then I got into backgammon for a while.
Backgammon.
Yes, I love it, dude. And nobody plays it.
Why backgammon?
It's got the gambling elements of poker with the luck element of dice.
Yeah.
It's fun. I remember one time when I was working for NHI, they were Joey Viescas, and I don't know if you know who these people are. Tino Varial, Coach Tino at St. Joe. They were playing chess in the middle of a activity, and they said, "Do you know how to play chess?" I said, "Yeah, I know I knew how the pieces moved."
Right.
Of course, they beat me, and they start making fun of me. I didn't like that, so I bought 3 chess books, studied for 2 weeks, and then we had a Christmas party, and I challenged them and beat the crap out of them.
I think that story it really exemplifies who you are because if you don't know how to do something and your friends know how to do it,
I'm gonna beat them.
You're gonna beat them
yes.
because you're that competitive. I want to go back to the poker thing because I think I'm just now remembering both of our passion and love for playing poker. Mine was on the back of the bus with the Edinburg Roadrunners. We played every night going to every single destination or in the hotel rooms, and when we got to go into casinos, like that was kind of a big thing. Just tell me about playing cards and learning and just reading all that information to try to become a good poker player.
And honestly, a lot of the poker stuff I studied and learned, I apply to football now, believe it or not.
Really? Okay.
Yes. The game theory element of I'm talking football here, but let's say you're a defensive coach and you're looking at a formation and people go, this team out of this formation, they run 80% of the time to the right. Well, if you look, the 20% of the plays they run to the left, if they absolutely will exploit you, if you overplay their right, then you got to play sound, even though 80% of the time they're going one direction. If they have enough of a balancing act to make you respect the other side, you can't overplay them. Mm-hmm. And I see coaches all day, hey, they're 80% over there, but yeah, if you overplay that, they're going to hit you big the other way. And poker's a lot like that of, well, if I'm only bluffing 20% of the time, you probably would still fold that given your pot odds and all that because it just doesn't make sense to call. So you got to accept that you're going to give up 20% bluffs or you're going to pay off too much money. You know what I mean? It's the same kind of thought process.
Right. How can I put this? Do you understand the power of your own mind sometimes? Because I feel like you've got a mind that kind of thinks in a next gear. Like you tend to look at things you're very much a future caster. Is that fair to say? Like you try.
I don't know. That's how I've always been.
Yeah, but would you describe yourself that way as someone that tries to analyze situations as opposed to maybe be a reactionary type of personality?
Yes.
And
have a plan. That's always my philosophy. And if you have enough analytics and you have enough understanding of the strategies and of what other people are trying to do, you can formulate plans on the spot.
So tell me about applying that to what you're doing now as a head coach, because I think there are different philosophies to how you run a program, because it's as much about running a program as it is the actual X's and O's and coaching and the type of offense you're running, etc. How much of that how does that help you? That natural personality aspect of things, in terms of being of having control and having a plan and things of that sort. How has that helped you, in these first few years as a head coach?
Well, I guess doing that is, as I was a coordinator and before that a position coach, I started trying to look at every different aspect, the most important ones that I knew that I could impact.
Yeah. And
I kind of built in like a mini philosophy about each of those things, whether it be the weight room, whether it be what I wanted to do on special teams, how I wanted my expectations with the kids to be built upon, that general attitude I wanted to be built upon. And I don't know if I'm beating around the bush of your question, but that's kind of where I went with it. And I just knew that I could keep up with, if I needed to change here and there, I'd be able to. It's been a learning process the whole way. The biggest, toughest thing for me as a head coach, when I was an assistant growing up, I never did paperwork. I was always the, logistics and all that. Yeah. And I'm lucky enough, my first assistant is a mastermind of that stuff, David Duty.
Yeah.
And he's
incredibly efficient.
Oh, man. And he does a great job of teaching me because I like trying to learn, hey, how'd you do that? He'll be like, you don't want any interest in this. Like, no, actually I do. And so I've learned, I never had to order equipment, so he showed me how to order equipment. A lot of little things like that. So I'm getting better.
So walk me through your coaching career, because I don't even know I know all of your coaching stops. When you first dove into teaching and coaching athletics, where was your start?
My dad got hired at Valley View, and he wanted me to learn from the ground up. So
that was 07, 08.
07, I think.
Yeah.
He brought me in at Valley View Junior High, and I remember I wanted to be a varsity coach. I felt I was ready. But he told me I needed to start.
Your dad wasn't the first football coach at Valley View.
Second. Josh Gonzalez was the first one.
Okay.
So I spent a year there doing 8th grade defense. The next year I was the head freshman coach. Then Valley View made a move with my dad. He got hired at San Diego with Spencer Gant. And
That's right.
He brought me in to coach safeties. I was a safeties coach there for 3 years. I started calling the secondary the last year. I got lucky that Clint Finley, heard about me through his coaches, met with me, offered me the defensive coordinator job. I think it was in 2012.
Over at Los Fresnos.
Los Fresnos. I spent 4 seasons there. And then Patrick Brown got hired, and he had his own people.
Right.
He was going to keep me as a position coach, but I got lucky enough that David Cantu at Brownsville Veterans offered me a defensive coordinator job. Mm-hmm. And I went over there, had a great time, learned a lot. Spent only about 6 months there, and then I got this job.
Tell me about your relationship with David Cantu, because I think he's got your dad over there now, and just working under him and what you've learned, even though you were only there for a short period of time.
Oh, it's awesome. He is a machine. Like, he finds himself busy all day. I remember he had me scared to be a head coach because he was just knocking out the paperwork part. Right. And I'd be like, Dave, how can you do this all day? He's like, it has to be done. And he was great to work for because he just let me get there. He let me do my thing with the defense, and he just told me, just stop him, Mike, and do what you got to do. So I got to spend most of my day on football, which is what I love doing. And he's just a great human being. His wife, my wife are friends. We're just real tight. We still keep in contact all the time, and he's a resource about a lot of coaching.
Did you guys know each other before you went over there?
No, we knew of each other because he's from Los Fresnos. He used to coach on that staff, and I had to go against him, the defense at Los Fresnos, and he was at Veterans. We went against each other 4 straight years, so we got familiar with each other that way.
Yeah, so David's on my list of interviews down the road here for this podcast. In fact, I'm going to go talk to him as we record this. This is the Tuesday before football begins. When we record this, this will drop a couple of weeks from when it's being recorded. But he's on my list. I'm actually going to reach out to him later this week. I think he's one of this next era of football coaches in the Valley. Like, you think of the eras of like the Tony Villarreals and the Robert Velas, etc. Then there's kind of that next group. I think you can throw like David Gilpin in that list. But David Cantu's name kind of just belongs right there, and he, much like David Gilpin over at Mission Veterans, it took an expansion program and has already made them competitive. What is it about David Cantu that makes him so successful over there?
Well, he's a worker. Like, he's there, and he's perfect for that school because the athletic coordinator of that school needs to be at every event, available to parents, able to talk to them, and he's that guy.
He's social media active.
Oh, he's that guy. Like, if people have questions about what's going on at the school, anything, and he's got an open door, and people like me sometimes, we're out there, we know how active we got to be, but heck, I want to work on football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can balance those really well, and he learned his offense from Scott Ford, which everybody knows the Scott Ford name is just big time, and he's taken that offense, evolved it, along with his offense coordinator, Sammy Matal, and they've done some pretty creative things that people have emulated. And I think he's always done a good job of getting himself a solid defensive coordinator. Larry Vincent before me, the late Larry Vincent. I was there, and then he brought in my dad, who's forgot more football than any of us might ever know. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he's staffed himself well, and he knows how to manage the dynamic of that school. And I think that's the same thing David Gilpin does. Yeah. He understands what Mission Veterans is, and he knows how to manage that dynamic very well.
So, talking about those, I'll call them new era head coaches because I think they've mastered, and I say this just because of their ability to use social media, their ability to make sure their stuff on Max Preps is updated, the fact that they use Huddle the way they do, because I still see programs even today here that aren't in that next level of using the resources that exist in 2019. And you being a smart guy, do you see having a leg up because of the era you grew up in, that you have a little bit of old school in you, but you're also a new age 21st century kid?
I was talking about that with somebody the other day. Like I exactly what you said. I don't know what to say a leg up, but it provides advantages where I understand the older side of the profession. I've been there. Actually sometimes understanding the newer people side is different because people aren't the same way. You just can't go in there and tell them how it is like you used to. But as far as the technology goes, I think it helps me out a lot. Even people my own age aren't as good with technology, and I don't know why. I think everybody our age should be. We grew up with it, but it is what it is.
Back here with Mike Evans, the head coach of the Javelinas of PSJA Southwest. So, Mike, let's. I've always, every time I've done one of these interviews, whether it was JJ Leja or David Gilpin and whoever else I'm going to be interviewing, I like to talk about getting the job for the first time. Had you applied other places? Had you applied to be a head coach before you applied for this job?
Yes, one other time. PSG North the year before.
The year before. So you were kind of, the first couple of times you tried, that second time you got an opportunity. Tell me what the first experience was like. Was that a situation where you thought, I just need to kind of go through this process, see what it's like, and try to perfect it because I know that this is coming down the road for me?
No, I just applied and didn't get an interview.
Okay.
It wasn't really.
So you didn't even get an interview?
No, nothing, nada.
Yeah. Well, there obviously something had to have stuck out in the application because you ended up still with the district here with PSJA Southwest. Just, can you tell me what that was like for you? You mentioned you were only at Brownsville Veterans for a very short period of time before you got this job. Can you, I guess, walk me through this opportunity for the first time, applying, going through the interview process, and what that was like for you? Because it was the first time you had to
never
really
done it. I mean, this is my strategy and belief in a lot of life. If you want a result, find someone that got it and ask them what they did. Mm-hmm. So I looked at people that kind of got jobs that were unexpected and tried to see what they did different and incorporated that into who I am. And just wanted, goal number one was to call me for an interview. I got an interview, so I was psyched. You know how I got obsessed about preparing for it, and I went in there. I think I hit a home run. Then I was like, I hope I get a call. I got a call for a second interview. That I went in there, and I was with the superintendent. If anybody knows our superintendent at PSJA that's retiring, Daniel King, he is one of the smartest individuals I've ever met. Like, he is a brain, and that kept me on my toes knowing how to interview with him. And I think I did a good job and impressed the committee enough that the board ultimately recommended me. But I thought I had a shot going into the school board night.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had that feeling leaving the interview, and I'm just glad I got the opportunity. I was stoked about it.
Yeah, and what did it mean to your family? What did it mean to your dad? Can you tell me what that conversation was like your first time, maybe talking to your brother, talking to your dad after you knew you were going to be the head coach here?
He told me, he kind of compared it to Valley View a little bit. I mean, this place is real right next to the Valley View ISD that it have some of those same challenges, and I'd need to take that experience with me, which I'm glad I was at Valley View before because it brought in some of the elements of the Los Milpas area. I'd spent the majority of my career in the Lower Valley, and people say the Valley's Valley, Lower Valley, Upper Valley, they're different in their own ways. So I mean, he helped get me ready there.
And can you describe, just I don't know, just from an emotional perspective or just a father-son perspective of how maybe he have felt knowing that he had another son, become a head coach?
Well, he was super proud of me. I mean, he told me I deserved it and I was ready, and he's excited for me, and he was going to be here no matter what to help me.
So you got to face off against your dad's team last year.
Yep.
With David Cantu's Brownsville Veterans Chargers. Tell me what the game was like. Tell me about what the week was like. Were there text messages going back and forth? Was there no communication?
No, we talked. We actually talked on the phone 2 of the nights, and we didn't really jab at each other. If you know me, my dad and I were both very honest with each other. There's no secret. He does what he does on defense. We do what we do on offense. So it was kind of, well, we know what you're going to do. Who's going to do it better? And he felt good going into it. I felt all right going into it. But they were definitely probably the better team. We got a little lucky down the stretch, and I think their team wore out. That was the end of that.
Tell me about game day. Tell me what game day was like. Tell me what, just as the game was kind of progressing and knowing that, hey, we got a shot here. Again, in Brownsville Veterans, for those that don't know, I mean, they were one of the top teams. They were competing with Mission Veterans for the top spot in the district at the time last year. You guys surprised a lot of people, but I think the game that really showed that this was a program on the rise was that Brownsville game. So tell me what game day was like last year.
I was anxious for sure. Going against your dad, it was always gonna bring a little extra pressure there. But the funny part was, if we're talking funny parts, is my little brother. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be on the sideline. Well, Brownsville has a strict policy. Only certain personnel can be on the sideline. Well, PSJA, it was okay. I've had him on my sideline before, but I told him he had to wear a Southwest shirt. So before the game, and my little brother lives with my dad still, so before the game, he sees me and my little brother talking. Andy has a Southwest shirt on, and he was a little perturbed, if you mind me, so it was funny. After the game, he was like, "Stay over there, don't come home." But no, it was intense. We came out, moved the ball a little bit, then turned it over. They went right down the field and scored. I mean, so I was like, oh, is this going to be one of those games? I think they got up 14-7 or 21-7 at halftime. So they had it in hand, and I think we got the score 28-14 with 7 minutes left, and we somehow found a way to score twice in 7 minutes and send it in overtime. That was a shocker. I remember at that halftime going to see my boy David Cantu, who's going to go flip the coin, and I'll just tell you a little bit about David Cantu. He got a smile on his face like, "This is cool, man." Like I'm all intense, like, "This is cool," So,
but you're in Mike Evans' super competitive mode at that point. He's over here, he's like, "Hey, just happy to be here."
He's like, "Hey, it's a good game, isn't it?" It's just super cool, and we're friends. I mean, I'm super competitive, but we hugged, flipped the coin, and first overtime we were tied. Second overtime, he had to go first, and we got a penalty. They got a penalty, and they backed him up. So I was like, yes, we got 3rd and long. We got a shot. And then they have a great field goal kicker. They kicked a field goal, and our offense was just on fire at that point, and we had kind of worn their defense down, and we went down like in 3 or 4 plays, scored a touchdown, won the game, and that whole veteran staff was a class act after the game, And it was just surreal. I mean, it was the biggest win for the school's history.
So I was kind of what I was going to get to. What did that win mean for the players? What did it mean for the school? What did it mean for you?
It just showed us what we were capable of doing.
Yeah.
Because you can tell kids you can do it, and it doesn't matter unless they believe it.
Right.
And our belief is if we execute and play hard, we can play with anybody. I think we got a great coaching staff, and we put our kids in good positions, but they were lacking that confidence, and after that day, they had a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and did anyone from the district reach out to you? Did anyone, did Orlando, did Mel Rios?
Orlando was there, and right when we won, he came up, wanted to be the first one to give me a hug. I mean, he's real supportive of us. Mel's real supportive of us. But, yeah, coaches throughout the Valley texted us, said, "Hey, big win." Because, I mean, we all understand what that win's like when you get – I mean, that's I don't want to say a program defining, but
it's a signature win.
It's a signature win. That's a perfect way to put it. And we had needed that.
And, so tell me how you take a I don't want to call it an outlier win, but what had been an outlier win for this team, and utilize it to make it a bigger thing for the pushing the program forward? How do you use that momentum?
Well, that's what's hard for me. I mean, we talked about it that day. We talked about it over the weekend. But I take the whole Saban approach. It's 1 week at a time. And no matter how much I'd love to keep talking about it, we just kind of left it there. And at the banquet, we talked about it. We did that. Like, and celebratory things, we say, hey, look, it's one of the accomplishments you guys did. But as far as driving us week in and week out while we're working out, I didn't use it that way because, I was at Valley View when we beat Mercedes 7-6, and what was the biggest upset in the Valley that year. And the next year it was 57-0.
Yeah.
They didn't take us lightly. We were on the radar. So I know how that goes. I don't want to get too much on that side of it.
Yeah, exactly. So listen, I want to talk about the challenges, because I think there's a lot of folks from outside the Valley that are listening to these podcasts just because of the familiar names that are going to show up on the news feed. And when we talk about challenges, I think like, for example, Joe Marichalar has the same challenges right now at Donna North. You and Far Valley View, Hidalgo to some extent, Brownsville, the southmost schools, just the border situation of where you guys are. And it's not going to be a political discussion, but you're going to have fewer athletes, even though your school's going to be of a bigger size. And I think the other thing is, just you don't know what your numbers are going to be from year to year because of kids, migrating, or they're leaving the area because their families are working, etc. What can you describe some of the challenges and how you mentioned the Far Valley View experience helping you here? Just some of the challenges you have as a head coach, and how do you deal with those to try to move your program forward?
It's just you got to understand that the cultural values are different.
Yeah.
Not saying bad, not saying good, just different. I mean, different from what I'm used to. And if you come in here and thinking that you're at San Benito's, the way they value football and everything, it's just not the same way here. And it's no knock on our kids. It's just growing up, their daddies didn't play football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We only have a handful where their parents, they're first generation football players. So, hey, coach says I have to be at practice or I'm not going to play. Well, then you're not going to play because we have to go see Abuela in Mexico this weekend.
Right.
Well, can I make practice Monday morning? You'll come home when we come home. And it's not the parents don't care about them or don't care. It's never been a priority.
The culture of playing football and the necessary requirements, of old school playing football aren't the same. They're not known. They're not belief systems, I guess.
Yes, I mean it's just not part of the DNA of those people. Do the kids love it? Yes, but I mean, I think we have kids who love and eat football up. We have some of them, and we have some that aren't all in. We have some that we have to work with, and that's at every program. Well, in some programs you'd be like, oh, you missed a couple days, you're out.
Yeah.
I mean, and here, especially the philosophy in PSJA, we want participation. If I had a team of 11 kids and we won every game, they wouldn't be happy because they want kids in the program. We want kids in the program. So it's balancing that discipline with that, finding different ways to enact discipline without using get out of the team,
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges at a school like this.
So because you come from an old school coaching family and an old school coaching mindset, I guess my question is, how did you adapt to developing a style that was, I guess, empathetic to the situations that you're faced with here at Southwest?
Well, what it is you modify. You don't change your expectations. You modify your discipline.
Okay.
Instead of 3 strikes and you're out, it's you got some extra running. And it's not going to be pleasant running.
Or make up the learning if it's
make up
plays,
the learning. And we got to do things like that, and being flexible about certain things. Like we got kids who got to work. We practice in the morning and after school, 2 days out of the week we have weights and video. And some of them are like, Coach, I got to work, and we have them bring us their work schedule, and we work with them because they're helping put food on the table. Some of them,
Yeah.
they're literally breadwinners, and who am I to say that? Well, you can't play football because you can't make the weight room after. I mean,
right.
Could I go there? Yes. Is it necessary? No.
And honestly, would it hurt you in the long run?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because now we're trying to help your family or play football, and I think that's why going to the morning practices, the kids really like it because now they can keep jobs and not have to leave the program. Like I lost a couple people my first year, like, coach, 3-hour practices and I got to come home. My mom wants me to work, and so it's different.
The variety of personalities that PSJA has at their 4 different schools in terms of the head coaches, I think is really interesting. Lupe, who comes from that coaching tree of passers coming from the mission system, and just he's pretty level-headed, and again he's pretty old school. I think you're kind of a hybrid of old school and new school. And then you've got Mr. Intensity in Marcus Kaufman, who I think has Red Bull flowing through his veins, I think. Do you talk with those? Do you guys? I mean, I'm sure that there's district conferences where you guys see each other. Tell me what that relationship was like with their 4 head coaches in the district.
Kaufman and I, we're good friends. We talk on the phone. My family, his family, not this last summer because I just had a kid, but the summer before, we went almost every other weekend fishing. So me and him are real tight. And that's really his DC. Will Littleton used to work with me at Los Fresnos, so that kind of facilitated that. I worked with Lupe at Valley View. I don't know if you knew that. We worked for a year at Valley View, so I was always cool with him. And he hasn't changed. Being head coach hasn't changed him. He's still Lupe. He is who he is. And Dave Brown, he's awesome. I mean, we all get along.
Yeah.
And I talk to Dave Brown if we have questions for each other. We call. But one thing I'll say, if we have a coordinators meeting with Orlando. It's business, but we all have a lot of fun together. There's no egos. There's no this. It's actually a very, it's not nasty at all. Some places you'd think the coordinators would be at each other's throats.
Yeah.
Nah, we get along.
What is it like having Orlando and Mel Rios in the AD chairs, knowing that both of them had such great success in this district as football coaches?
I'll tell you something about athletics and PSJA as far as the management of the program from the top. It's top notch. They really do a good job. They want us to be the gold standard. Whether it's doing tickets online, whether it's our track stadium having the best. What's the word I'm looking for? FAT timing system operation. If you ever want to go see how the Olympics do it, ours is just like it, and that stems from Dr. King because that's how he expects. So working with both of those guys is pretty neat. Orlando's, the head honcho, so he's the one who's going to come down on everything. And Mel Rios is there as the spiritual guidance for most of us, and it's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, I think it's so cool to have so many football minds in one school district, and especially I always kind of joke around with Mel, being a PSJA guy because he was the 3 yards in the cloud of dust, PSJ coach, and then he's got to see Lupe air the ball out with his QBs, and I was like, hey coach, you couldn't have thrown in the spread a little earlier, if you're a PSJ. But I think I love both of those guys. I've covered those guys for such a long time. You guys must get a ton out of working under those guys.
We do.
Yeah. Anything about just anything? You got any funny Mel Rios stories, Orlando Garcia stories that you want to share?
I don't know if they want me to share them.
Okay. Maybe I'll wait until I get them on the podcast.
No, but they're both good guys.
Yeah,
they're great. I like working for them. It's been awesome.
So now you're here. You're in a program where you made. I don't want to say made history because this program had won 6 games before, just once, but hadn't made the playoffs. How do you take what you did last year, and I know you're a one game at a time, the Saban approach, but how do you build a program to where, okay, now we're ready to fight for maybe that number 4 playoff spot?
I mean, that's really, like you said, this program's won 6 games. We were 2 games away, and those 2 games last year were decided by a total of 4 points. We're right there, and so
one of those games because you went for 2 in overtime and tried to get the win. So it's not like you're very much one of those guys that if we got a chance, I'm going to take it, type of thing.
Let's end it right there. But so we preach to them. Let's get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's the goal we have right now. If we do more than that, fantastic. That's the goal for the step that this program needs to take. That's where we need to go with it.
Where did you when you went for 2 there? What was going through your mind? Which game was that? I'm trying to remember.
It was against La Jolla Palmview, and once you get over about 50, 60 plays in a game, your defense is tired,
yeah,
and kind of your game plan might have been worn out already. Well, they started overtime. They went right down the field and scored on us. Mm-hmm. And then they added to the score, so it was, I think that made it 28-21. Well, we go right down the field and score on them. And I'm like, okay, I think this is going to be a score fest. If we're going to score, let's just score right now and end it.
Right.
So I went for 2.
What did you decide play wise, and what do you wish you would have called?
I called zone option, which is the play we scored on from like 15 out. I'm like, let me just call it again.
Yeah.
And
that's the old Madden move right there.
Yeah. Repeat. Yeah. So I just thought, why?
The triangle button to run the last play? I forget.
Go with the analytics. If something is efficient, successful, it was a play that we've been efficient with the whole game. Like it was there for us. So I said, let's go with that, and we got stopped like about 6 inches short.
It was close. I mean, we were all looking at it.
Then you start second guessing yourself, and I'm sure it's human nature. Everyone starts second guessing you. We should have called this. So I'll live with it.
But I don't feel like that was maybe it was. I remember texting you and I said, and this is not an explicit podcast, but I'm just going to say this, man, you had some serious cojones, going for 2. And I how much I love and respect you, but I think my respect level for you as a coach, I think went up another level because you gave, to me, that's a move that a program like yours should make because it shows that you care and that you believe.
We did.
Yeah. And what did you see any positive impact as a result of even going for it and then it not working?
Yeah, I mean, just you look at it like what I told the kids afterwards. Again, it's all the analytics, the poker again.
Yeah.
It's like, look, if we ran that situation 10 times, you ain't scoring 10 times.
Yeah.
I thought we would have scored 7, maybe 8.
Yeah. I
just think we ran into one of those bad 1 or 2. It's just part of it. I mean, there's no 100% thing.
I would be remiss to having an interview with you without talking a little Star Wars.
What's up?
If that's cool with you. Where are you in the Star Wars saga right now? Do you still keep up with everything?
Yes, I'm in, but I'm just. I don't know if they just threw the Emperor in to liven it up. Like, what is he doing there? Yeah. That's like my favorite character, but what is he doing?
You got a
there?
lot of questions after
this
most
absolutely.
Trailer came out. Yeah.
Like, we all saw him go in that hole. We all saw the shocking hands. Like, he's out.
Yeah.
What is he doing?
But you as a reader of the Star Wars, the old Star Wars extended universe.
But those are spin-offs. You know what I mean? Like,
this is the main story.
This is the main story. This is different. So I don't know what is he doing there.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see how they're going to do it.
What were your? I'm going to go through the new films, and I'm going to see. You just give me the thumbs up and thumbs down and how you felt about. How do you feel about Rogue One? I'm already surprised.
No, it was all right.
Okay.
Like, it was good. The Vader scene at the end was cool.
Yeah. I see.
That one had the most connection to the original, though. I say that.
To me, Rogue One, and you're going to disagree with this, Rogue One is my second favorite of all time.
Really?
Star Wars film, yeah. I like the adventure aspect. I like the kind of almost what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like an Ocean's 11, but in space because you're you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
like there's a mission, and it's not really it's not. And I like the fact that you know what it's for, and it makes sense of what it's for. But you don't need to see any of the major characters for it to make sense.
You're right. Yeah. In that regard, it was good. I think maybe I just wanted. I mean, I wanted a lightsaber fight.
You want very little lightsaber.
I wanted the lightsaber fight,
but I think.
But I get it.
I think that's the most badass Vader looks in any film.
Oh yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to see more of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Force Awakens. I really felt like they did the template from A New Hope and just redressed it up.
New people, yeah.
But like, it was good. I mean, it was safe. It was a very safe movie.
Yeah.
Now,
Last
Jedi. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not a fan.
No. Luke Skywalker was not cool.
You didn't. Oh, see, okay. So you see, this is where there's always things that you and I disagree on the Star Wars thing. I didn't like a lot of the choices Rian Johnson made.
Well, like
But-
Yoda popping out, the sacred text. Where did all that come from?
It's how-
No sacred
It
text.
was very, very midi-chlorians, like, kind of
Yes.
we're throwing this in there.
Yes,
all
let's
that
just
stuff.
sprinkle that in here, and
Yeah.
Yoda burns it up like
Yeah.
it was too over the top.
It's crazy that like in the prequels, there's like this whole temple library of all these volumes.
Yes.
And then you're telling me that there's like 6 books. Like that's
It looks like an elementary kid's book bag. I mean, that's not the sacred text.
yeah. Very, very, very different in terms of how we perceive.
Now, what I
they
do
should
like, I do like Rey. I do like the female lead. I'm in on that. The twist and what happened to her parents at the. I mean, that was.
Did you like Solo? Did you watch Solo?
I did like Solo.
See,
I was very entertained by Solo.
I'm of the belief that people stayed away from Solo for a couple of reasons. One, they had just done Last Jedi, and people were upset about Last Jedi. Last Jedi made some decisions a lot of people didn't like, and they didn't really promote Solo the way they promoted Rogue One.
Yes.
So people stayed away at the theaters, and people just assumed that it was bad because it didn't get as much money as some of these others. But to me, Solo's to me it has cult classic elements to it in that if you watch it, it's really enjoyable.
It's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
The who's that famous guy that plays Lando?
Billy D. Williams. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. What's his
The Lion King guy.
Childish Gambino.
Yeah, that guy was good.
Yeah.
He made the movie even better, you know?
Yeah.
So I was all in on Solo.
Yeah. I figured by now you'd have purchased a Sabacc deck and started challenging everybody in the coaching staff.
I did that in one of the video games, man.
Play a little Sabacc.
In Knights of the Republic, which I haven't played in a while.
Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up, I have a little questionnaire. You watch? Have you ever watched Inside the Actors Studio?
Never heard of it.
All right. So James Lipton, I'm sure you probably have seen it before, but he's got this little questionnaire that he asks all the actors before he that opens it up to questions from the audience. So I've got this little questionnaire. It's supposed to be fun. It's not rapid fire. Want actual thought to these answers. So we'll go through these one by one, and then you tell me what you think. Okay. So, Coach Mike Evans, what is your favorite word?
I don't know. Awesome and excellent. I say those a lot.
Okay. What are your least favorite word or words?
It's really not the actual words. It's words that deal with complaining.
Okay.
I can't stand complaining.
Okay. Best purchase you've ever made?
Dang. You know what? My iPad for work. That thing's been saving me.
Okay. Worst purchase you've ever made?
I bought a Yeti backpack that the zipper keeps breaking on.
Okay. That's always the worst when you find something that you wanted to buy or like,
Yes.
and then it's defective, and yeah, I don't know exactly what you're talking about there. Random fact about you that no one would know, or very few people would know.
I think we talked about how nerdy I was. I mean, I think that was a...
Yeah, we're a little expose on Mike Evans.
Yeah.
What about your fan? Do you still have a fandom for Highlander? Is that still a thing with you?
Yes, I love Highlander, but the second Highlander still goes down as one of the worst movies of all time.
Okay.
We actually had a discussion the other day. Me and Mark, my brother, we love movies. We're like, that one, over the top. Remember the Stallone arm wrestling movie? That was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And a movie, I don't even know if you know this, but it was called Think Big.
No, never heard of it.
Go look it up. It was
Okay.
two bodybuilders who were driving a...
That sounds already bad.
It's horrible.
Yeah. So it's like Hans and Franz driving a taxi or
Worse.
something like that. You can have dinner with 3 people, living or dead. Who would they be?
Immanuel Kant, Socrates,
Wow.
and Bear Bryant.
Why? Why those 3?
Immanuel Kant, he's my favorite philosopher. I mean, I was a philosophy major.
Yeah.
I'd like to pick his brain about some things. Socrates, I'm curious because nobody ever knew Socrates but Plato. He wrote about him. Is he really as cool, like brilliant as Plato made him seem?
Yeah.
And then Bear Bryant, I've always been fascinated with Bear Bryant.
Yeah. From a football coaching perspective, I think it's hard not to. I mean, a lot of people would throw you could probably throw 4 or 5 names in that, either Bear Bryant or Tom Landry or Vince Lombardi, things like that. There's kind of a list of like those coaches that you could just list. John Wooden, you could just, he's not a football coach, but just their quotes seem to be everywhere.
Yes.
And you wonder, like, were they really that brilliant? Did they really have all that many quotes? You know, you're on death row and you have one final meal. What are you eating and what are you drinking?
Raspberry tea with this is sound weird, a fajita taco, man.
Yeah.
I like a good old fajita taco.
Any sides? It doesn't have to all fit together. Like, that's the thing about these death row meals, is like you can kind of mix and match.
Fried okra.
Fried okra. Okay, that's interesting.
Mashed potatoes, gravy. There we go. I'll be happy with that.
So we've gotten a lot of chicken fried steaks. It seems like chicken fried steak is the coaching meal of choice if they were on death row.
Because it's a lot of food for cheap.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think about it that way. A football coach in the Rio Grande Valley that you admire.
I've been talking to John Campbell a lot. That guy's brilliant. If you ever get to talk to him, he understands the football game. You know, I know a lot of people say, "Well, Edinburg Vela's got all that talent." Like, he's impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I call him and pick his brain, and he's awesome enough to answer my questions and help me when he can. So I have a lot of admiration for him.
If you weren't a coach or a teacher, what profession would you attempt?
Probably end up being a lawyer.
Lawyer.
Or mock trial DNA.
Yeah.
But it's not what I really want to do, but that's probably what I would have done.
Yeah. Vacation destination that you've yet to visit, but you want to.
Ireland.
Why?
I just think it's beautiful. I want to go play golf and just hang out.
You a golfer? I don't know if
I'm not as into golf as I used to be, just because once you have kids, you just don't have time. But I like links golf. I've always wanted to play links golf. That's been fascinating to me.
Okay. Anything else about Mike Evans that you think people should know about that they don't?
No, I mean, I got a beautiful wife, 3 wonderful daughters, no boys. So
Yeah.
I live in a house of women.
Yeah.
I'm a dog lover.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So, Mike, before we wrap up, just tell me about as you embark on this season. Like I said, we're recording this as you get ready for your 2019 season. Just, I don't want to talk about expectations or any of that stuff, but just how you're feeling about going into this. What is it, is this your third year?
My third year. It just mixed. I mean, the pressure to win's there, and that's one thing I love about this. I mean, that pressure keeps you sharp, keeps you hungry, knowing that if you don't take care of business, you're out of a job, I'm real happy we bring back some key people on our offense. I think we can do some special things there. We're going to have to our defense is going to have to grow up real quick. We're inexperienced in the front there. Heck, we're starting a freshman.
Yeah.
We're starting a freshman on varsity at linebacker, and I've never ever been a part of that. And it's just that creates some uncertainty of not like you're negative about it, just like, oh, let's see if we can play, So there's some of that element in there.
All right, Mike. Well, I have a feeling that we'll end up doing this again. You and I go way back. You know how proud I am of you, but I should say it here on the podcast so other people can hear. I've known you a very long time, and I've known that this is what you wanted to do since you were 16, 17 years old, mm-hmm. and just getting to see you do this and see our friend over at Brownsville St. Joe, Tino, do this, and we all 3 go kind of way back, not in football, but in nerdy stuff like the great debate at the National Hispanic Institute. I'm just extremely proud of you, man, and I wish you the best of luck this season.
Thanks, man. I'm proud of you, too.
Appreciate it, man. All right, big thanks to Mike Evans of PSJA Southwest High School, and congratulations to him for a 2-0 start, going for a 3-0 start as they take on PSJA Memorial this weekend. And big thanks to him for spending the time with me. I got a chance to talk to my friend, talk to my buddy. I've known him since basically we were in the 9th grade, and went and cheered for him at his football games whenever I had the chance. I've always been rooting for him his entire career, and it's so nice to see him have a head coaching job here in the Rio Grande Valley, and it's just really cool to be able to sit across the table and talk football and life. We've done it a million times before, but in this particular setting where me, the interviewer, doing what I've always wanted to do growing up and be a storyteller and be a broadcaster and talking sports, that's what I do for a living. And for him, he's always wanted to be a coach, as you heard in that interview, and for him to be doing what he's always dreamed of doing and having some success at it certainly makes me proud. And and warms my heart. Okay, enough of mushy stuff. We look ahead. Week 3 of Valley High School football is on the horizon. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you stay tuned to all of our social platforms. Make sure you're following me on all of our social media. That's at Alex Del Barrio on Twitter and on Instagram. You'll find different types of audio clips for the previous week's episode and the next week's episode, where you can find some previews of that. So that's going to be very cool. So make sure you're following us there. Plus, you want to follow me on Facebook. That's at the Alex Del Barrio. That's at the Alex Del Barrio. And you've got to type the whole thing in if you're going to find me. I'm working on with Facebook to try to get that to be a little bit easier. But at the Alex Del Barrio on Facebook if you want to find me on my Facebook page there. Also, the podcast has its own Twitter page at Spiked Podcast. That's at Spiked Podcast. And easy enough, our official email. If you have a question, you can hit us up on any of the social media platforms, but if you want to send us an email, spikedpodcast@gmail.com. That's spikedpodcast@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Tell us what you think. Tell us some of the names of coaches that you want to hear from and maybe some of the questions you may have for them. We've got a lot of them already in the books to this point, but looking forward to adding some more names to the list as we continue on with the Spike Podcast here in 2019. And don't forget, this is a listener-supported, fan-supported podcast. You can follow those platforms. It's anchor.fm/ADB podcast or GoFundMe.com/ADB podcast. This is where we are able to improve our technical aspect of things, add new microphones, headsets, other type of equipment that we need so we can improve our listening quality, our audio quality, and so we can take the show on the road and do some really cool things. And that's what we're using 100% of the proceeds that we get from anchor.fm/ADB podcast or GoFundMe.com/ADB podcast. And make sure you hit subscribe. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Doesn't matter where you get it. Hit the subscribe button. And if you're on Apple, give us 5 stars. Throw us a review. It helps out our algorithm and helps this podcast get into the earbuds of more and more people. And the more people that are listening, the more likely we are going to do more and more of these as the years to come. So that's going to help us out. And I'm pledging you guys to do one thing, or I'm hoping you guys can pledge to do one thing for me. If you have a Valley High School football fan in your Rolodex, in your cell phone, in your Facebook friends list, in your Twitter timeline, forward this show to them. Send them an episode of this show. It doesn't have to be this one. It could be week 1, week 2, or a future episode. But send this to somebody. Send this to somebody that you think will enjoy it, and that helps us out. And the more listens we get, the more people we got listening to the show, the better it is for all of us. So we can keep bringing you these shows each and every week. Look forward to keeping this podcast going. So if you can pledge to give this to one other person and tag me in the tweet. If you're sending a tweet to somebody, tag me in the tweet and I'll retweet you. Because I want to know who's listening to the show. Tell us if you like the show. Tweet at me, at Alex Del Barrio, at Spike Podcast. I want to hear from you. If you like the show, if there's something that you want to hear on the show moving forward that we're not already doing, please let us know. And I'll be happy to do my best to make sure that we have this, because we're doing this podcast. It's not for me and it's not for the coaches. We're doing it for all of you, the high school football fans. So that's going to help us out. Just send this podcast to one other person, and hopefully they enjoy it as much as you do to this particular point. But week 3 on the horizon, a lot of big games. We got to a lot of those, and we're looking forward to this week. I'm going to be personally at the Brownsville Veterans Mission Veterans game. Can't be more excited. And I guess I'll go ahead and give you the sneak peek of who's ahead on the podcast. We still have interviews with David Cantu of Brownsville Veterans in the can. We've also got an interview with Tino Villarreal of Brownsville St. Joseph. That's coming up in the later weeks. We're also going to talk to Sherry Lane Pioneers' Tom Lee, Brownsville Hannah's Mark Guess. All of those are upcoming on the show, and if there's someone that we haven't talked to yet that you want to hear from, make sure you let us know so we can make the arrangements and make that happen. We also, by the way, have a very special edition of the podcast coming up. It's going to drop sometime next week. I can't tell you who it is just yet, but I'm really excited about it. He's one of my favorite people on my Twitter timeline and things like that. It's someone that's not local, but someone that certainly loves Valley High School football, and I can't wait to bring it to you coming up I believe we'll do it sometime next week, but we'll have to kind of wait and see as kind of things progress. So that's all things I'm excited about. So that's going to wrap things up for the show. My thanks to our sponsors, Anchor, and of course, Trapped RGV Escape Rooms. And if you want to be a sponsor, make sure you contact us, spikepodcast@gmail.com. So thanks to our sponsors, thanks to Jake Berry, and of course, thanks to my very dear, close, personal, longtime friend, Mike Evans of PSJ Southwest, for joining me on the podcast. And I wish him and the Javelinas the best of luck for the rest of the season. For all of them, my name is Alex Obario, thanking all of you. You can call me ADB, and we'll see you underneath the Friday Night Lights. This is Spiked.